Hey, guys, how are you today? I love my guest that's coming on today. I just love her as a person. I'm so excited to have her. She is someone that I've loosely known through Arate. As you guys know, that's a really big part of my life. It's an entrepreneurial group of just really like incredible, badass entrepreneurs who really have high level thinking. And I just had the unbelievable pleasure of being at Women in Business that Emily Frisella does a conference for women, and she was a speaker, and she was just incredible. So I'm gonna give you her bio, which I'm gonna read it to you, but I want you to just catch her essence, who she is as a person, because she has all these accolades. She's really like an incredible businesswoman. She's done so much in her life, but the way that she does her business is so it's just she leads with integrity and love and just her communication. And when she's training people for human resources, which I'll explain, she's always considering the relationship. And I just admire her so much. And here we go. I'll give you her bio. Anne Laguzza is the CEO of the Works Consulting. As a seasoned business executive with human resources management, leadership development, and performance coaching experience, Anne works with clients from a variety of industries to develop better systems, maximize employee productivity, and enable management to focus on business growth. And prior to doing that, Anne served as a regional human resources director for a Fortune 500 distribution company. There, she led a merger transition team and was responsible for strategic planning, implementing new policies and procedures, workforce restructuring, compensation structures, and integrating the work cultures for over 600 employees, which is quite a feat, I have to say. It's very impressive. In addition, Anne was formerly the Human Resources and Training Director for a startup entertainment company. At this company, Anne was responsible for organizing, implementing a company-wide program that involved new company direction and strategic planning. Prior to work in the entertainment industry, and served as a regional training manager for a nationwide retailer. As part of a corporate expansion project, she developed and launched a multi-state training program for human resources. She's earned her Master's of Arts degree in organizational management, and a bachelor's degree of arts degree in psychology. And she's an active member of the Society of Human Resources Management, and is the board chair for Harbor Interfaith Services. The list just goes on. She's just a badass. She's an incredible woman. And I think that whether you own a business or not, or you're a leader or not, as a human being, you're going to learn from her today. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring Anne in. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Allison from Allison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. I have my special friend on today as a guest. And as you all know, I shared about her bio and how she's like this badass, like business woman who's successful and has her own business. But what I was sharing, and that you may not know, is I was sharing that what really draws me to you is that you are a person, and I said it on the bio, of like love, integrity, that all the and relationship, and like all the things you're doing in business, it's like genuine and it leads in that way. And I just was saying that anyone on here, anyone listening, you can take anything that Anne says and hear her style, hear her good-natured attitude, hear the way she approaches business, because you can approach your families this way, your relationship this way. You don't have to be a person who is an entrepreneur. But if you are an entrepreneur, I just want to say, really sit back, take notes, because when Anne spoke at Women in Business, Emily Frisella's event, I've been a business owner for 30 years, and she taught me so much in such a very simple and clear way. And it's all infused with relationship and kindness. And that's what I think has been lost in leadership. So that's really, and I just love just spending the time with you, Anne. So I'm so glad you're here. Thank you
Love
for
that.
being
Thank
here.
you.
Yes.
I'm
So
excited.
let's talk about, we were just talking off camera about because I said, "And you got like a backstory? Like, were you like beat up and left in an alley somewhere? Like, and then you decided to start a business?" She's like, "No." And it was just kind of hard work and like a decision to solve a problem. So I just think it's so cool. I want to highlight that. And I'm just tagging Tony Watley in that as well, because Tony says, you do not have to have a terrible backstory to be a success. And what I just want to say that Anne is a great success and she didn't have to suffer through it. Well, maybe you did. I don't
I
know.
know.
But I would love for you to speak on that. Tell us how you came to where you are and tell us about you a little
Oh
bit.
my gosh, I love that. Well, so it's so funny because of course, everybody has a story, and of course, I have a story. But I really, like you said, like in comparison to what some people have overcome, I'm like, wow, like I didn't come anywhere near any of that. But really, like I sort of fell into the human resources leadership development space, and wasn't even called that when I started working in it. And because I'm located in California, I first really focused on, oh, we've got to deal with all the laws and compliance. And that's what's making the work environment hard for managers and leaders to be successful. Right. But over time, I started realizing that what it was really coming to is that leaders didn't have good training and good support, and even really anybody that they felt like they could talk to and bounce ideas off of. Of course, you would hope that they report to someone that they can do that with, but that relationship sometimes is challenging because that person is also the person that does your reviews and decides if you're going to get a raise or a bonus. And so sometimes you're hesitant to sort of share your insecurities or areas of opportunity with them. And also sometimes they don't know what to do with it either,
Yeah.
right? So you really
Yeah.
get stuck in a situation. So I started my own business. I really was focused more on compliance. And quickly, I realized that there was so much more to being in human resources and helping leaders be successful than laws. And that was, even though, I know California gets known for our employment laws,
Yeah.
that's really the easy part. And it's what I see. And I was just sharing with you as well off camera is when I see a leader is going to get terminated, and really, yes, maybe they would have never been able to succeed, but when I back up and I realize that they were never even properly trained,
Yes.
it just breaks my heart. I mean, truthfully, and when I see employees that are frustrated and feeling like they're not being treated well, I just had somebody, I mean, these are the things that like happen to me. Like I'm out in a one of my clients' places, and employee comes up to me and says, what if your supervisor's yelling at you? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And you just are like, okay, so let's talk
No.
about this, right? And I'm not saying, yeah, supervisors, of course, we get frustrated. We're human beings, things happen, but are there other ways to get our team to do what they're supposed to do and have them maybe enjoy the work environment better? I mean, that's what really drives me today. So that's kind
Yeah.
of how I got to where I am.
I'll tell you, what you're describing right there is, because I was thinking about you saying that without a backstory, but then I'm thinking you're drawn to somehow relationships. You
Hmm.
must be
Yeah.
because, so even though maybe you didn't know why, it's because it fits you like a glove. It really does.
Thank you.
So no, it really does, Anne. And what I'm thinking about is that like here, like I've made so many mistakes, in business 30 years, so many mistakes, and I'm always willing to learn. But like, the idea of raising someone up, promoting them into a
Yeah.
leadership position, but they're not really leaders, but they were great at their job. And isn't that one of the mistakes we make?
So common. I mean,
Yes.
I was coaching a leader the other day, and she straight up said to me, I didn't even want to be in this role, but everyone around me convinced me to do it. But she really doesn't want to do it, but she's
Yes.
doing it. It's funny. She's actually really pretty good at it, which is
Mm.
why I'm sure people convinced her to do it. But again, you have someone in a position they don't even really want.
Yes.
So it is interesting. And I want to kind of mention what you said at the beginning, so important, because of course I talk to a lot of people who are actually supervisors, managers, CEOs, but I really do believe that everyone is a leader. So even if you don't have supervisory responsibilities,
Yes.
you're a leader still. So how you show up, how you present yourself, it's important, and it makes an impact on others around you. So I think we're all leaders, right? That term in
Yes.
our own right, for sure.
Yeah, and and just to tag on to it, not that we're going to go down that path, but anybody who's a parent here, you're a leader.
Mhm.
You're running a small company or a large company,
Yeah.
right? I felt like I was running a company and you building management, like all the things. And people don't realize like it's a job to run a household. I had four
Yeah.
kids, like a big house, running my own business. Like and you are a leader. The thing that you also said, and which we know as leaders, it can be so lonely.
Mhm.
And what I wonder about being lonely, and I know you're going to speak on this, is like the fear of, first of all, the shame that's already inside of us because we think that we're not good enough, all those stories in our head, just in
Right.
real life. I don't want to admit that I'm wrong, or I don't know what the hell to do, or I can't stand this employee, or all the
Yeah.
various like the mean stories in the head that could come up, or
Yeah.
feeling defensive. There's so many things that pop up, right?
Yeah.
And then so like I feel like as a owner, this is vulnerable. Check this shit out. And oof, I know you've heard this. An owner of a company or a CEO,
Mhm.
you're the last buck, right?
Yeah.
So that's like, you got to make the right decisions, you think, right? Now, what about when you feel like, because you're the owner, I know other entrepreneurs say this, that you feel almost defensive. You feel like maybe people don't like you. But I mean, I know people who work for me like me, but there's like this fear, like, am
Yeah.
I going to offend them? I don't want to be too hard. I don't want to be too soft. I've done both.
Yes.
Yes, right? That's a big thing.
So common. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, I think, and kind of what you're leading to is I think there's this pressure like you're supposed to have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
Because you're the CEO or you're the manager, you're the director, whatever. You're supposed to have all the answers. And I'm constantly saying like on a daily basis, you don't have to know all the answers. Like it's okay to say, you know what? I need to give this some thought and I got to get back to you. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Now, obviously, if you're doing that all the time and you never have an answer, you know, you might eventually lose some support there. But it is, we're dealing with people, we deal with information that we get that we might not have had before. And sometimes we need to think it through and really figure it out. So yeah, it is, I would say it is lonely, but I would say that I do this activity sometimes where we do like I don't know if you ever heard of this, but you kind of do circles and you're supposed to be kind of putting in sort of who's in your network, so to speak. Like who are the people that you go to, the one that's closest to you, who would be the closest and the next.
You
And
mean like
usually,
in the company or friends, like,
well,
or
that's
life?
so funny. So
Yeah.
what I tell them is they can't be related to them. And then that usually gets people really stumped because I want leaders to have people to go to. I think it's fantastic if you have your person in your life that you can go to. I love that. But I sometimes that relationship gets taxed by
Well, I
all the
don't have
work.
that. So
Right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, or somebody doesn't
Mhm.
have that. So I always say go outside of that. It can be friends and it can be someone that you work with. Ideally, it would be someone outside of the work environment that you would feel super safe being vulnerable with. Because I think that is the hard part to say, like, I
Yes.
don't know what I'm doing. And I think
Yes.
that's where when people start working with me, a lot of times they're told to come to me. Like, so their boss tells them to come to me, or, the CEO will come to me and say, okay, I want to do some coaching, but a lot of times they don't even really know what that means. Like what are you going to do for me? And then what they start realizing is that they're building a relationship with someone that I have no attachment to the outcome, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
mean I don't care about it, of course, but I don't have an attachment to it. I'm not working in it day to day. So I can give them a completely different perspective, and I can also be that person that can listen to them and not I don't have any judgment, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad or, oh, what a mistake you made. I'm just not, that's not what I'm there to do.
It's like a therapist.
I
No, really. I mean, we're therapists here. So it's like a
yeah.
good therapist, not a bad one. But it's like a
Yeah.
good, like really having that person that you can just be so real with.
Yeah.
And but you have the knowledge to help. I wonder if you could just speak about like the balance between, because one of I've been told I've done both. So like I tend to be more like, I want you to be happy. I want people who work here to be happy.
Yeah.
And I'm so invested in that I can lose money on their employment. I can like, and then
Mhm.
then like inside, I'll feel like some resentment, and then maybe I'll say something wrong, but I never yell or anything, but I'll be like more
You can
like
yell.
just no, I never yell. I've never yelled at somebody who works for me ever.
That's so good.
But internally, I feel like, wow, like what the F? Like, can't you just do your job? Like,
Yeah.
don't you care about me? Like, how we feel with our
Yeah.
kids. Like, don't you want to do that for me? But it's so silly. But I'm just wondering, like, what's the balance between like being kind, giving somebody an opportunity to develop. Like we have
Mhm.
a strategy that we do, but then like if somebody's really not taking ownership or following the core values, then we have
Yeah.
to that's really where it ends.
Yeah. And it's funny because I actually often say that I feel like the only people that lose their job are the people that no one really likes.
Mm.
Because when you really like your employees, you keep them at all costs. You give them chance after chance after chance.
So damn
And
true.
you keep, yes, it is true. So it's like, but when we don't really, mesh well with someone, it's like, oh, they're out of here. Right. But we can have someone we really like doing the exact same thing and we keep them
Don't
around
say
because
you
we
heard
like
it
them.
here,
I
people.
know.
You didn't hear this shit here. All right.
It is. I mean, because again, like we're mixing in. That's what I'm always talking to leaders about. It's like we're human still. We're not robots, right? We're human, and those
Yes.
things still happen. But I think, I think it is very important to be, make sure people know they're valuable, give them all the tools to be successful. And I feel like if I've, given you the training that you need, I make sure that I've checked in with you. I met whatever the reasonable needs are. Obviously, if you hire someone with certain skills, like as in a therapist, you're not going to train them all over again how to be a therapist, right? Because that's what you
Well, you'd
brought
be
them in with.
surprised.
Oh, so you
Yeah.
might need to train them on like a certain method.
Yeah, and maybe going deeper,
Yeah, yeah.
like, we can hire like new people that are just kind of out of school. So
Oh,
they'll learn
yeah.
all the education at school. And I think the education for being a therapist, get ready for the controversial statement. I think it sucks. So basically, it's like I actually like when somebody's new so we can help them to
Oh,
really, because like if somebody like get their symptoms are gone, usually people are like, okay, you can go now. But we're like, that's when we step on the gas. We want them to be like, find their greatness, their
I
purpose, like,
love
and like
that.
live a life of majesty, and
Yeah.
not like sit there like cold robots, like, oh,
Yeah.
I won't tell you anything about me. I've never had a problem in my life. Meanwhile, we're fucking train wrecks over here,
Yeah.
and that's why we're good at it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you just said something super valuable too, is that I think I personally love to hire people. I'm more focused on what the not so much their skills, right? But what's their attitude like? Do they have great customer service skills? Do they seem like they're going to fit into the team really well, right? And I'd rather teach them the basic stuff,
Yes.
whatever, the nuts and bolts or the operations. Because I think that I don't know. And this is from in my experience, and or I should say, based on my past, I was given a chance in this type of industry when I didn't have any experience. I had been a manager, but I didn't know anything about human resources. I didn't know anything about facilitating workshops or speaking or any of that. And someone gave me a chance because they were looking for someone who's enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Swear. They're
Yes.
like, we need somebody with a college degree and who's enthusiastic. And I was like, how can those be the only two requirements?
I
And they're like,
love
we're going
it.
to train everything else. So I really do I know that is sort of my inclination is I'm always looking for the what someone could learn and could be and all the things that are hard to train, right? Hard to give somebody excitement, passion, all
Yeah.
those things. I would rather hire somebody with less skills and teach them. So I love that you said that.
You know what's really cool? Like that makes me feel so good because I think I really respect you and I feel like you're really smart. And that really is how I feel. That's
Thank
how I
you.
want to hire.
Hmm.
And I love what Andy Frisella says. He says, don't hire for experience. Somebody could have 20 years shitty experience,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, just to to me, when somebody lights up a room and they bring energy to the room and they have passion, like I always tell when I'm interviewing people, I ask them, I explain and I ask, we're missional. Like
Yeah.
we have a greater, higher calling. It's not about, you're not working to build my empire.
Right.
We want to save souls. We want people to have hope in life, right?
Right.
So it's
Right.
like, and that's like a life mission,
Yeah.
So I just am curious, like the thing that you shared, and I don't want to put you on the spot. Would you give us the whole training that you trained at the Women in Business right now? No,
Yes, I will
but
do the whole thing right now.
like you talked about such cool things that I didn't know. I mean, I don't know if you remember what you were talking. You talked about like five,
Yeah,
like
we did the stages of a team that they go
yes,
through, and then we talked about kind of what the leader needs to be doing during each of those stages.
yeah,
And and this is the theory behind the stages of a team is not, I didn't create that, like that's been around, but sort of the way I started looking at it is from a leadership perspective and things that leaders should be doing during those stages.
yes,
So there's like a, just simply, there's sort of a progression that typically teams go through anytime you add a team member, anytime you remove a team member, anytime you have significant change in your
yes,
organization. The team goes through 5 stages, but it can go really quickly, right? So when I
yes,
describe them, right, they sound long. And if you're in a more like a bigger change process, you will feel each stage. But
yes,
depending on your team, you and the change, it might be really quick. So some people might be like, oh, wow, did we even go through all the stages? But
yeah,
you really do see them like just how, there's so much excitement and enthusiasm whenever it's the beginning of something, right? And everybody's like all about it. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing things start to settle in, and people start facing sort of the reality of what it's going to be like. And sometimes that's dissatisfaction, and sometimes they're still excited about it. And that is, I think, so like I'll give an example with a new
yeah,
hire. Every time someone hires someone new, and 2 weeks in, they'll call me, "Oh, Anne, I heard the best person. I'm so excited." And I'm like, first of all, so glad you're excited, right? I want you to be excited. However, hang in there, because the
yeah,
first 2 weeks is still that newness, and everyone should be showing up their best. Just let's keep going, and
yes,
let's see how things progress. And by the way, I'm not saying that to see that they do worse, but
yeah,
you're going to see opportunities where you might need to step in and help them as a leader. I've had people try to promote someone, after a month. Oh, they're so great, I'm going to promote them. And I'm like, well, let's just let them settle in. They've literally only been there a month. Let's
yeah.
let them settle in, and let them learn some more things. And if you continue to feel that they're appropriate for a promotion, of course, like, yeah, we want to do that. But it's really interesting. So it's sort of like the cycle of the change process, and how you navigate the team through that.
You know, I'm so fascinated by this because what would you say to a company? I mean, this is my company, right? That I'm
Yeah.
actually going to describe is that we are regularly, basically from all the time going through major changes. And the reason that we go through major
Mhm.
changes is because we grow so fast. So we'll be in a location 1 year later, we've grown out of the location. So then,
Wow.
so like now, there's like just in the last 6 months, we sold a building, moved a location, bought another building, we're renovating the location. We, 3 people left, we hired four, maybe 5 people. We have
Wow.
a really top leader, and what we're like great friends, and it's nothing negative. It's just a great like thing. But then we're having really top leaders, and just like so many changes.
Yeah.
And it's consistent, like, and even like in 21, my husband died, so I had to leave the business for 6 months. I was like
Yeah.
out of the business. Someone else just took over who was just like brand new. Like so many things have happened. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, because I just feel like like because of the growth and whatever, it's always like that. We're
Yeah.
always hiring new people because we need more therapists, we need more
Yeah.
rooms. So, I don't know, what would you say to me or a company
Yeah,
like that?
exactly. Well, so what comes to mind first is you would absolutely want to hire people that do really well in that type of environment, right? There are
Yes.
people who prefer to have consistency, same thing, kind of same day, or, it looks a different day, but same thing.
Yeah.
And then there's people who really do well in change environments. And I know sometimes I've heard people say, like, oh, it's like chaos. And I'm like, no, you don't want it to be chaotic.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what we're going for. It's just a high change environment. So ideally you have leaders who are really good at navigating all those stages of change that you go through and how they need to interact with the employees at different stages, because it's happening all the time. So I would say that means you need really active, engaged leaders. You need everyone on the team needs to understand that it's a change process, kind of continuously changing, but in a good way, right? There's growth, there's good things that are happening. And yeah, I think the thing that came to mind as soon as you were saying that, you just need people who are really actively engaged in terms of leading the team, because there's lots of things that come up when that's going on. And I would
Yes.
imagine, like, so ideally you're trying to get to a team that's performing, right? They don't need as much time from the supervisor. They understand sort of how things work. They can navigate through conflict pretty well by themselves, right? That's what we're all shooting for. I would imagine you have times where you have teams that are in that spot, and maybe even in that spot on certain change processes you've already gone through. And then you're almost starting over again, either with other people. So the more I'm going to figure out the more often you can get to a high performing team, the easier it is every time you go through all the stages again, if that makes
Yes.
sense, when you start back over, because they know that they're going to get through. They know that the end result is going to be a good one. They know that there's going to be some bumps along the way, but we're going to work through it. So they believe, and then they can help carry other people through, especially anyone who might have doubt or concern, or not sure about where this is all going.
Yeah, you make me so happy because I realize that I actually do that. Like on an interview, I explain that this is a dynamic
I love
environment. We have
that.
systems in place, but there's always like our org chart is always it's a growing organism. I try to
Yeah.
explain it to them so that they're
Yeah.
not like if you want like a simple, you know, job, this would never be it, right?
Right.
Ever, and I noticed people, but one of the mistakes I think I made forever ago, Anne, was that not even forever ago, maybe like 4 years, 5 years ago, was that I was always feeling like there was something wrong with me as the
Mhm.
owner. That
Mhm.
there was not like I was too busy. There was always something happening. And
Mhm.
I felt like I was not like a mother who's not paying attention to their children.
Yeah.
And I think that I guess, like, from Arate, like, I learned, like, the more problems that come that you're jumping over, that means that you're successful.
Yeah.
Like,
It
I
really
never knew
does.
that.
It does.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
like, you think that, like, the more because 'cause you're, like, resolving things, like, that's my job.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's almost like your problems almost start to elevate, like, right? So
Yes.
it's not maybe some of the more, I hate to call them basic, but more
Oh,
basic
yeah.
level problems, but you start to have bigger problems and things you have to work through. And yeah, it usually is a sign that the business is growing and things are going well. You had mentioned Andy Frisella previously, and I was thinking about, even I've learned a lot from Andy in hiring. Like, he definitely has progressed even some of the thoughts that I had in terms of being a leader and the way to hire people, because I do think he's got a very clear core culture, right? His values are so clear. And I think that's really something that's admirable, and trying to replicate that for other businesses. So good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear I mean, just you talk about core values because we have really strong ones. We give awards like we have a Gumby, little
Oh, I
Gumby. We're like,
love
we are
that.
Gumby, flexible, good
Yeah.
natured, like all these things, right? So, and I would love to hear you talk about
Yeah.
it.
Okay, I
Mhm.
have to tell you this story. I'm so
Tell
glad
me.
you asked this. We did
Good.
not even talk about this in advance. So, this was years ago. I
Yes.
was not as experienced as facilitator, but I had facilitated a lot of workshops, and I got hired by this very big company. You would know them, but of course I won't say, but this very big company. And so for me at that time in my career, I was like, I am going to this company, like, oh my gosh. So I'm doing all my homework. I'm going to talk to them about I think I want to say that I'm trying, of course, I don't remember the exact topic, but I think we were talking about customer service, leadership, blah, blah, blah. So I go on their website and they have these values. And I'm like, oh, I know what we're going to do. We're going to take these values and we're going to go through them and we're going to talk about how, their customer service fits into these values. Okay. This was like my lesson in people sometimes just put values up on a wall and don't ever talk about them. So I start going through the values. I'm like, I swear, I just laugh. I think about, I can see the room. I can see the people's faces. I see myself. I'm so proud of myself for coming up with this really cool program. And I think there were like 5 values and I might've been on number 2 and I'm not getting a lot from the group, right? They're not giving me a lot. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And so like, I see this hand go up and I'm like, yeah. And they literally, one of the managers of this company says, where did you get these values? And I mean, my mouth probably fell open. I was like, they're on your website under the section that said values. And everybody in the room, so I've never seen them. I don't even know where these came from. Maybe corporate made them. We don't, oh my gosh. It was an immediate like, wow. So I, of course, saved the training, but it was an immediate like, wow, really? People do not know their values. And I didn't know that. I really didn't. I really, because I believe that if you're going to, and the companies I had worked for before I started my own business, when you put your values together, you live those values, right?
100%.
Oh my gosh. So it was such an eye opener. So to hear, Andy really talk about the core values and how he manages to core values. And I'm like, that's exactly what people should be doing. I walked another company through that. It was a similar situation. They were talking about this employee who they were having a lot of challenges with and kind of going through should we move on? Should we give them another chance? And I said, well, it seems like this behavior that just happened doesn't align with your core values. And again, it was like the whole table. Like, what are you talking about? So it was wild. I'm like, what is happening? But that company, I will say, not only did we start managing to their core values because it made them sort of dust them off and relive them, but then they really did start embracing them. And I just think
Beautiful.
I think having those values and living by them. And I think one of the things that I heard Andy say is you don't have to already be I guess acting in those values. Like it can be a goal. You don't have to have achieved it already, right? Like excellence can be your value, but you might not be excellent all the time every day, but that's what you're going for, right? That's what you want. And I love that. So it gives you that permission and then really believing in them and not overcomplicating them. I mean, sometimes I got to be honest and I'm going to talk about now I'm going to get heat. Sometimes when people are like, oh, we've been in a, 2-week session with a consultant and we're developing our core values. And I'm like, I don't know. Do you need all that? I mean, maybe you
tell us. Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know. Could you have developed them in a much faster way, in a much more grassroots way with your team? Did we need to go with the, big presentation? And maybe some people do, maybe they really don't know how to flush them out. But I just sometimes wonder, could we be more just in touch with our people and really put together values that are meaningful to them without making it this big complicated thing that comes with big posters again on the wall and all that's great, but what we really need to know is, do we believe in our values and are we going to be able to manage to them, and is everybody clear on them? Obviously if you have 1,200 people in your company, it's going to be harder to be grassroots, and I get it, but but they are so important, more than I think people know.
I want to ask you if it's okay. I'm going to pull this thing out.
You can ask me anything. I told Allison she could ask me anything.
We did this thing. So we have our core values, right?
Okay.
So we call it the valuator.
Oh, I like that.
Isn't that cute? So basically, we have the person.
Yes.
The practice, that would be like the operations, and then the supervisor do like a plus minus, kind of like from Traction, how they do like the people analyzer, kind of like that. So then like we like our core values, take initiative, like we want them to have personal development, so that they can help clients. A mission driven team player, prioritize the client experience, go the extra mile, live in the solution, take ownership, flexibility, Gumby, right?
Okay, I
So
love that.
what I was going to
Gumby.
say is, so like when we go, if somebody we're having a problem with someone that like they're really not like doing their
Yeah.
job, whatever, we'll go through it with them. And then we like evaluate like the number one we feel like is so important is the one that says takes ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So if we share all this, whatever we feel like is the issue, and then we see that they don't take ownership, that's like a larger issue.
Right.
So we had this person who had that issue, right? And then she wasn't taking ownership. So then we had a meeting with her. And we said, we're going to give you 30 days to change it. Right.
Yeah.
And, and then what I loved what somebody who worked for me did, I feel like I'm telling you this like you're my mother, like you're
I
going to pat me on the back.
love.
Are we on a podcast right now? Because, but I just feel like you got
I'm
to, but if
hanging
I'm doing
on.
something wrong, you got to tell me. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So then what I loved, this was not my idea. So not, I mean, this part, yeah, but
Yeah.
the part, so a woman who like runs my business, she's in charge of a lot of stuff. She just started giving this person opportunity to succeed. So she'd say, hey, she'd give her an opportunity to take initiative, right? I didn't think of that because I already labeled the person a certain way. So then
Yes.
you would think, oh, I'm not going to give them that because they're not going to do it.
That's right.
And we could do that with our kids. We can do it with
Yeah.
like how we perceive someone, right?
Yes.
So she, right?
Totally.
Right. And I'm sure I'm talking way more than I should in regard because I want to hear you. But
I
I
love
just thought that
that.
was really cool. And you know what ended up happening? She totally turned around this girl, like a million. She was young. And guess what? We gave her the core value award of takes ownership. Somebody who didn't take any ownership. Now she like got an award at the month, like
Oh
the month.
my
Isn't that cool?
gosh. That is so cool. But that's so important because it is it, and you probably know this from the therapy world, but it's like it is so easy to like decide and okay, this person now, yep, I'm putting them over here. It's not going to work out, or yeah, we'll give them 30 days, but you don't really give them any chance to step up in that 30 days. And that's the same way I feel about like delegation and people don't give. I always say it's like an opportunity, right? For someone to be successful and really show what their skills are. Oh my gosh, I
You,
love that.
you
And so
taught
it's
me
true. It's like,
something. You talked about, which I loved, and I've utilized it, that like when somebody is going to like when you see someone and they're like they're not doing well, right?
yeah.
So all right, I'm gonna let you say what you would do, like because I have two things I want to say because I like a fear of like I have like either a fear of like once I see that somebody's not doing a good job, like I'm going to be honest, this is like the really bad leadership shit that I do. It's really bad. I own it.
It's probably very common.
It's
Trust me.
so bad.
Everybody
And I don't even
struggles.
want
It's
to tell you.
hard.
I just like avoid them because now I'm just like, I'm just
Yeah.
like, I don't want to spend time on people who are not invested
That's
here.
that's
So
right.
like, I don't know. I mean, I know I have to grow up and not do that. But what do you like? What do you do?
Well, I do. I mean, I do think that if we're at the point where we are avoiding somebody, we need to make that decision, probably that it's time for them to move on. Because if we're not going to give them back to your, I mean, that was such a great thing that you just said. If you're not going to give somebody the opportunity to be successful, then we need to give them that opportunity to be successful somewhere else. And a lot of times, what I say to people, they feel so badly. And I get it about making a termination decision. But just because someone isn't working out for you doesn't mean they're not going to work out for someone else.
Yeah.
I shared, a little bit earlier that there's a leader I know that will eventually be terminated. And, I know that leader is going to be successful somewhere else. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they're not in the right spot. And I
Yeah.
know they're going to be good somewhere else. So it's like, yeah, once you're avoiding people, that's a no. You got to figure
Set a
something
sign.
out.
And you know what you said? This was the thing I was going to say before. You were saying like how, like we talk about the core values, all the principles that you use, and like this is what really helped me. What you taught me is that okay, when I'm talking about our core values, or I'm correcting someone, or I'm helping someone to do better, I'm helping them in their life to advance as
Mhm.
like you said something at that thing. I want to help you to be successful here.
Mhm.
which that changed me because you
Yeah.
know what? When I was like giving direction or like talking about core values or a mission, I always felt like I sounded like a cult leader,
Yeah.
that it was all about me, almost like weird. And I felt embarrassed, like to really, so then when I thought that I'm really is helping them to be a
You're helping
better,
them.
right?
Yeah, I say that a lot too in terms of like when you first hire someone, because I feel like for some reason when someone's hired, the immediate thing to do is sort of let them just go off and be on their own and wait until they run into a problem. And I don't understand that. What should really happen is that should be the time, and I call it close management, that you're really almost circling around them because you want them to be successful. So if I came to work for you today, I've been in my field of human resources and leadership development for 32 years, which sounds really long. And I have a ton of skills, but I do not know your company. I do not
Right.
know your culture. I don't know the best way to communicate. I don't know who's who. Right. And I make a joke about it. Like, I don't even know where to put my lunch when I show up. Right. I just like silly things
Yes.
like that. But you want every single person that comes in your company to be successful, and you want to invest that time up front so that then you can loosen the rope, if you will, and let them like go out further and further and further, right? So then they know they always can reflect back on, these are the core values. This is how we communicate here. This is who I go to when I have a problem, all those things that you need. It's, I used to have a client that would always say, we would do hiring for them, and we would go over what they're looking for. And it would always be, well, we basically need someone to hit the ground running. It was just like the thing they would say over and over again. And
Mm.
it kind of became a joke. So I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but if you're telling me that you want to hire somebody because you don't want to train them, like you want to hire somebody that you don't need to train, that is just not reality.
Yeah.
Like, sure, you can bring somebody in that generally knows the skills, right? But they may or may not be successful in your work environment. So you're going to end up probably with a lot of turnover because you're not taking any time to make sure that they're like, incorporated well into the culture. And I just think that's so important. I think it's a really common mistake that people make, not
I
spending that
know
time
I've
up
made
front.
it.
Yeah.
I've definitely made that mistake.
And I think
Probably up until I met you.
many of us
Seriously.
have. Well,
Yeah.
and I think to your point, it's like, so when you hire them, the first conversation needs to be, hey, I hired you because of this, like all of these great things you bring to the table, and I want you to be successful here. So I'm going to be managing you a little closely for your first 60, 90 days, but I want you to know it's not because I don't trust you. It's because I want you to be successful, right? And who's going to be like, well, I don't want to be successful. Because if they said that and you'd say, okay, you can go, we'll hire somebody else, right? No one's going to say that.
Yeah.
No one is going to say they don't want to be successful. Of course, I want. If that's what you think it's going to take for me to be successful here, then I'm on board.
Yeah. You know what? I love that. What would you do? Like, let's say somebody just is like, because you're always nice, Anne.
That's not true.
It's not true.
Okay,
Like
everyone
maybe
can
like
write
if
in
we
the
shut
show
off the
notes.
camera, be like that bitch, Allison. Just kidding. So like what would you do? Like, okay, let's say somebody just would not like just won't comply. Like let's say
Right.
they won't see like they were hired to see a certain amount of clients. They just don't do it. Like there's a
Yeah.
million reasons, legitimate reasons, but it just never happens, right? What would you do?
Well, I mean, I always say I feel like in those situations, that is where you've got to have that conversation. Say, okay, listen, sometimes, okay, so I'm going to say two things probably. Hopefully, I remember to get to number two. But sometimes, and you heard me say this, I talk about having a reset conversation,
Oh yeah.
because sometimes I think in a changing environment like yours, a lot of entrepreneurs go through this. The job that you hired someone for, maybe even 6 months ago, is potentially not even the same job today. And sometimes people adapt to that and sometimes they don't. So I think sometimes you need to go back and have a reset conversation. And the reset conversation looks like this: like, hey, Allison, you know what? I want to go back to sort of what the job is that we have today, because I realize it may look different than the job you were hired for. And I
Okay.
want to go through it. Yeah, it's the responsibilities, right? But it's also maybe other things that you're looking for them to do. But here's what the job is. And then I want to check in with you and make sure that are you still feeling excited about that? Is this still something that drives you to come into work, that you're excited about. Because if you're not, then I think we need to have that conversation, because there's something about, I find anyway, a lot of employees hold on to like how things used to be, and it becomes very frustrating, especially in the entrepreneurial
Yes.
world, because we're often changing things a lot.
Yes.
And so I think sometimes you got to go back and have those conversations like, yeah, things are different, and here's the job today. And they might not want that job today. And I think you have to be okay with that. Say,
Yeah.
okay, well, then let's talk about that. What does that look like? So, what does that transition look like? Is this, something that, and you might need to, is it something they need to move out right away, or you need to move them out right away? Or is it something that can be a slower transition process? It probably just depends. But I think having that conversation, and then the other conversation I was thinking is just in general, like, what's going on? Like, I feel like I've been really clear on what I need, yet this is what I'm getting. And they
Yeah.
are not connecting, and I can't sort of just let it continue to go this way. Like, we can't just continue to disconnect. We have to connect. So what is it that is going to change after this conversation that hasn't changed out since the past 3 conversations or 4 conversations? And
Yeah.
like I said, I think sometimes, and I'm not saying this is easy on my part either, because it's just never easy to have to end that employment relationship, especially with someone you really do like and you want them to fit in.
Yeah. You know
Yeah.
what I wonder? And as you're saying this, I'm thinking about, how like with core values, like we were saying it before, that I feel like people just I never believed this. Andy said it, I never believed it. It actually can't believe it really does happen. People like a centrifuge, they'll like spin out, like if they're not part of the core values, right? They
Yes.
just like leave. You don't even have to like they don't
Yes.
fit. So what I wonder is like, because I can actually see that as a good thing. Like if I see like a couple of people that you just knew didn't fit, just leave. But then how do I know if I'm being in denial that maybe I'm doing something wrong that people are leaving? Like that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh shit, either it's me, like I really like am I in total denial, like, oh my God, that place, or is it really like,
I mean,
that's
that
what
is a really good question, but sometimes I look at how much turnover is and in what period of time. I always want people to reflect. So if someone doesn't work out, I want them to take a moment and reflect on the hiring, because that's often
oh
where
yeah,
we overlook things,
100%.
and that you pay for that every single time. I guarantee you 100%. If you do not have good hiring practices and you overlook things that are, obviously not going to work within your culture, you will pay for that and they will eventually leave. So I do look for patterns of things like that. I think it's obvious. I have to tell you, like, I can tell the difference between a company that is really not treating their employees well, and the turnover and the feedback and et cetera, versus the employees that are spinning out because they're not they just don't align with that culture. What I was going to say too is I love that you brought that up, because when people come to me, and then often, and I seriously have had where people have let an employee sort of underperform for almost 20 years. They just kept transferring them. They kept changing their job and giving them less, but nobody would just say, this isn't working out. So I met with the director and I said, okay, listen, we need to start meeting with this person every 2 weeks. We need to be clear, right? What the expectations are. And then we need to, evaluate how they're doing. And of course, the director didn't want to do that, but we did it. And you know what? It didn't take very long. And that person opted out. They came to one of the
Yeah.
meetings. They said, you know what? I think I'm out. It's time for me to move on. And we said, okay, no problem. But it was such a different exit than it would have
Yes.
been. And I think it was the right exit, because would I normally have acted faster? Likely. But when someone's been allowed to just be around for 20 years and no one's telling them they're doing anything wrong, it's kind of shocking to walk up to somebody and be like, it's not working out. You're out of here.
Yeah. Right.
You
Yeah.
absolutely can. But I
Yeah.
tend to try to, kind of like you said, let's give them an opportunity. No one's given them a chance to step up. All you keep doing is moving them around and taking things away. And let's see if they make that decision. And the decision that she made was to get out.
Yeah.
So we
And
supported
that's
that.
always good.
It
That's a
is.
yeah. I
Yeah.
noticed like even in a meeting I was just in where we were talking about that like there's some like employees who are not doing, performing even just like I don't know, 3/4 of what like more like
Yeah.
half of what they should be doing. So like, and then there were other therapists in this meeting who were saying like, you know what? I do that job and I do this job and I do everything. And I'm really sick of the fact that they don't step up. Like they're mad at them,
Yes.
they're, and like, then I'm thinking, like how long, also you think like in coaching, right? Well, we don't coach with therapists, right? But
Yeah.
then it's all the clients who they're seeing. So it's not like
Yeah.
easy to just let someone go who's underperforming, because then you care about all that group of people
Yeah.
that they are seeing. It's
Yes,
a big transition. It's a lot on
it
us to
is.
change it. So it's a longer process.
Yes.
You know what I
That is a
mean?
really good point. We do have several clients who are in your industry, and it
Yeah.
is a whole other thing you have to think about. Where there's some industries where it's like, oh, you're out of here, right? And they can make those fast decisions. But
Yeah.
then there's some where it's like, but you have certain standards that you have to meet. And how do you move them to a new therapist? And what is that gonna, what? And so it sometimes prolongs making a decision because it's like, oh,
Yes.
that sounds so overwhelming. Can we
Yeah.
somehow make this person just work?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so that's a big thing. Tell us, so how would somebody hire you? Like, what do you do exactly?
Yeah.
That's and I want you to tell everybody where they can find you and all the greatness that you have.
Okay, that's awesome. So
Mhm.
there's really I would say three areas that we primarily focus on. We definitely, like I mentioned in the beginning, we still have a human resources compliance portion of our business. I'm located in California. We have lots of employment laws. So whoever's listening that has California, employment issues, we understand those. The second place people hire us for is recruiting, and we do that, throughout the US. And we help people find really great team members so that hopefully they have less performance issues. But we help them from hiring through onboarding, through their first 90 days, all of that. So we have some different programs to really
How do you
help
do that?
people.
Like, you're involved in
Yeah, so we help make sure they have a good onboarding process. We help them with when they should be doing what during what steps. And we have a whole, I'll call it intake, which you'll relate to, but an intake process for the recruiting. We call it a perfect person profiler that
Oh,
we go through with our clients to really make sure that we're good. We have a good match of an employee. And that is something we're really good with. And again, it just comes to because we have so much experience and we've seen so many things, we can identify pretty quickly if someone's not going to be a match or not, which is different than someone who's doing that hiring on their own. Because number one, you have more of urgency because you need somebody right now. And a lot of times we find that our clients are more willing to overlook things that we would not overlook. And then they're
yes.
thankful that we're the ones doing that for
Yes.
them.
And you actually interview the people?
Yeah, we do. We
Oh,
actually interview them and then we make recommendations to our clients and then they usually take the process from there. But we help them sort of design that whole process in an effort to not only hire the right person, but then take care of them when they finally get there.
it's like dealing
And
with the issue at the root.
yes,
Yes, the
I'm
seed.
telling you, I think
Mhm.
great hiring solves so many issues. I really
Yes.
do, because
Yes.
you spend much more time up front to really make sure you've got the right person. And like you said, telling them what your work culture is like, et cetera, your values. And then you have a much better chance that they're going to be successful there because then they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And knowing that, just side note, knowing that you're going to meet people in the interview process that you really like that aren't a great match. I've
Yeah.
met some fantastic people that I wanted them to be a match, but they just really weren't a match. But they were great
Yes.
people.
Yes.
And then the third thing that we do here is the leadership coaching, which is we
Mhm.
do individual and group coaching. And how, I have all different people, right? I have some leaders who are within a company, and then I have leaders who run companies, and they either get to me through word of mouth, or sometimes, like I said, they're directed to come to me because there's already been identified that there's a problem. I
Yeah.
know I hate that moment, but we usually bond really well. And I've had great success with helping turn many of them around. And
Oh, I
again, it
believe
usually
that.
just comes from they just need the tools. They didn't know what to say. I worked with this really, I just love her. She's one of my favorite clients, but she's a VP of sales, and she was getting primed for the next step in the company. And they were like, we don't want you to squash the sales part out of her because she's so good. And I'm like, I'm not going to do
Yeah.
that. Like,
Right.
don't you worry. She
Mhm.
will still be a fantastic salesperson and be great for the team she's leading. So, yeah, so I love that part of it, like I said, because at the beginning, although, of course, compliance important here, but how you talk to your people, how you make sure they feel valued, and even how you move them out of the company is so important. And
Yeah.
I love giving leaders that hope. Like some of the biggest compliments I get is when the leaders I work with said, I have hope again. Like I really thought maybe leadership wasn't for me. And I feel like I can do it now. And that's like amazing. That's what I'm going for.
It really is. And just even when I listen to you at Women in Business or just sitting here, it like just knowing that there's a person that you could even when you totally screw up or like
Yeah.
you don't like
Yeah.
you're afraid, people pleasing, all the things like I could just can't even imagine how you're great. You must be so great at that. I know you're great at it.
Thank
You're
you.
you're doing
Thank
it
you.
now. You're helping
Thank
me.
you. Yeah.
Okay, so where can people find you?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Okay. So
girl.
I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn at my name, Anne Laguzza. And my website is theworksconsulting.com. And those are probably the best places to get a hold of me. And I would love if anybody would connect after, that'd be amazing. Give feedback, whatever, ask a question. I absolutely love that.
Yes, and let me ask you, so you're in California. Do you only see people in California? Is it
Oh,
nationwide?
yeah. Such a good question. So, in the human resources space, we primarily focus on California. Many of our California employers have, locations in other states. So, we do handle those as well. But for the recruiting and leadership coaching, of course, that's anywhere. I have clients all over. I have clients in Canada.
So listen, I want to thank you
Okay.
so much for
Thank
being
you.
here. We're gonna
Yes.
we're gonna sit very close at the Women in Business. I want to stay in touch with you and just I love everything that you do. I'm just so grateful to know you. I really do, and I mean that. I'm just like
I
very
know you
serious.
do. I feel the same. I was so glad to finally meet you in person. I had seen you in our Facebook group, your name all the time,
Yeah,
and all the things you would write. And it was so amazing to meet you in person last year. So I guess that was
so
last
great.
year. Yeah, it was last year. Gosh.
Yes, we like
Yeah.
have a
So
whole
thank
year
you.
friendship now.
I
I'm just
know. I
kidding.
can't. I'm excited. I love it.
You know
I have
how
a
like
new
when little
friend.
girls meet and
Yeah.
become friends, it's like little butterflies like in a cartoon, like, oh, like all that
Yeah.
little thing. It's like, oh my God.
It's
We're
so
funny.
awesome. But
All
thank
right.
you so
Such a
much.
pleasure, hon. All right.
Thank
It's a
you.
wrap.